Welcome into Pac. Oh. Here we go. Welcome into Pac-12 Preview, everybody. Yes, I am Michael Caratanudo, and at Diablo00 on Twitter is where you can find me. And it is Friday. Yes, happy Friday to all. Summer has officially hit. Well, the summer solstice was on the 21st. But yes, summer has officially hit. It is hot. It is the off season in everything, but we are gearing up towards fall practice and all that good stuff. Fall ball and everything like that. So, yes, this will be the last show of the summer or of the season, I should say, of the season. And until August, and we will hit it again because obviously football will be in fall camp, and obviously getting ready for volleyball as well too. But yes, so this will be the last one till August, but we have a fun show for you. Very awesome. Great friend of the program, Chris Karpman of Sun Devil Source. We've had him on a few times, and yes, the man does know ASU football, recruiting, and we're going to talk a little bit about obviously the state of the Pac-12. Him and I brought it up before, but wanted to get to it, didn't get to go too much into it, and he has kindly agreed to come on again. Love when we have Chris on. Obviously, want to thank Brad Denny for coming on the last show. Speak of the Devil's podcast, and him and Joe Healy have been at it for a while. So again, speaking of the Devil's podcast, wherever you get your podcast, please add that to it because it is absolutely a great listen. And so glad he could come on. But yeah, as speaking of the Devil's podcast, you will not be disappointed. That being said, I'm going to bring back Friday or Monday at the end of the show, we had the ASU sprint team. And I'm going to bring that interview back before we have Chris on. But yeah, I mean, just a shout out real quick before we do that to all the teams and champs this year. ASU track, Turner, Washington, and you'll see the sprinters. They're still going. They're going to be competing in another week. Actually, next weekend. A week and a half, basically. They'll be competing, but you'll see that. Up in Oregon, after what they did at the NCAA championships, Turner, Washington, you'll hear it in the interview, won the disc competition on his very, very, very last throw, making everybody be on pins and needles. Took second in the shot put. A young man that we talked to, you saw it here too on Pac-12 Preview, got to go out and talk to him, has the Olympics on his mind and, came from a place. So we'll talk to him in August as well, after July, but when we get rolling back again, and the sprinters as well. So and so yeah, that's like I said, sorry, looking at some notes, shouldn't be cheating there. But yeah, that going forward, track wise, new look volleyball wise at ASU in the Pac-12, but again, still having to deal with Stanford, and obviously basketball wise, women's side dealing with Stanford. On the men's side, UCLA, like I said, lost a few to the Giraffe. Jaime Jaquez Jr. Went to the Miami Heat, and I went through all that. And I'm going to go through all that again, but I think that's a great fit for him. The way Eric Spoelstra coaches, the way they play doesn't, he got picked later on. So you're not expecting, people, oh, well, he got picked, 17, in the first round. So that being said, congratulations to all the athletes, the academic All-Americans too, from all over the conference. There was a ton throughout the conference this last year. Quite a few graduated. And quite a few of them will be back next year as well, but finishing up and now can either start a grad school or obviously focus on their sport. So, yeah, that is exciting times. USC, the women's beach volleyball team, winning the national title, beating conference rivals UCLA. Also, USC women's golf taking the team title, but Rose Zhang from Stanford takes the individual title and has started out very well on the LPGA Tour. She actually won her first tournament the next weekend after being the Pac-12 individual champ. So a lot of great things going on the men's side. Baseball-wise, Stanford obviously had a hell of a season. Softball wise, they did as well, or softball wise, Utah definitely stuck out, hosting a regional and a super regional, going 0-2 in the Women's College World Series. Been a minute since they've been there, and actually losing to Washington. And then Washington and Stanford had a battle, taking each other out. And then Stanford won that, but then lost to Oklahoma a second time. But still a hell of a Pac-12 season in softball, as always. UCLA absolutely dominant and somehow loses in their regional. Again, when I laugh, it's just because it's still shock to me. It's still shock. And then basketball season, obviously, what UCLA did, ASU getting to the tournament, Arizona as well, getting upset by Princeton in the tournament, ASU winning the play-in game over Nevada by a large amount, and then falling to TCU on a last-second shot. And they actually play TCU this upcoming season. So that'll be fun to see, next season. Well, this upcoming season for ASU Hoops TCU. We'll see what UCLA looks like. Obviously, no Jaime Jaquez Jr., no Tiger Campbell. But again, Mick Cronin, what he's done there, I'm not nobody's feeling sorry for UCLA. Let's just say that. But in August to get, more into who's finally in. Obviously, transfer portal has been busy. Calm down a little. Obviously, calm down in football a little bit. There's always a few late ones that might surprise you. Might surprise us. But women's hoops, Utah again, and Stanford. Obviously, the season Stanford had absolutely insane in women's hoop side in the Pac-12. So, yeah, just a lot going on. But and then football this past season, obviously Utah, and then USC, Oregon. After that tough first game against Georgia, bounced back like just gangbusters and looked insane. Their offense, Dan Lanning, obviously Kenny Dillingham, and then Kenny Dillingham now back at his alma mater, back here at ASU. But what Oregon did, USC, Utah, we'll see how they reload. And then Colorado hiring Coach Prime, and a ton of guys were gone. And they said over 65 hit the transfer portal. 65 at it. Well, there's 85. You get 85 scholarship players. So are gone. So, yeah, it's a new team, but still time to gel, stuff like that. Like and Dion, we'll get them talking about, and they'll win more than one game this year. Absolutely. But they're not going to be winning the Pac-12. So I'm going to go out on a crazy limb and say that, but Chris and I will get into that later. So football-wise and wrapping up the season. But I'm going to take a quick break, and when we get back, coming back, we'll have the ASU sprinters on. We had them on Monday, but I wanted to re-air it today because honestly, absolutely awesome. And they're running for some championships up at Oregon, 4x1, 4x4 teams. So we will. I will step aside, but then when I get back, we will have. I'll have the interview from the ASU sprinters. Keep rolling, man. Rolling, man, because that's what we do here on Pac-12 Preview, and we keep going. But right now, I am so happy to be joining. I know it was football there and a little ASU, but now the sprinting team from Arizona State University is, and they are very accomplished guys. Thank you so much for jumping on. I know you're still working because. You guys, I always said this. So I got Justin Robinson, Trevor Moyer, Dubin Wachukwu, and Jeremiah Curry joining us. Guys, training in Arizona, I got to get to this right away. Thank you again so much for waiting there for a second and jumping on. But coming to Arizona State for track, or even just here in Arizona for track, you're going to get coached well. But how much does the heat give you guys an advantage? Because I got to think in meets, you're not tired during meets, especially when you got the nice indoor air conditioning, right?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, you guys, now the 4x1 and the 4x4, I mean, you guys set, your times were absolutely amazing as I was following in the championships and watching on TV, and you even got my old butt to jump out of the seat going back to my track days. But how much, especially in the 4x1, because, yeah, we know everybody knows the 4x1, the teams have the speed, but the handoffs. Talk to me about the exchanges and just the minute thing that could happen, but you guys made it look so smooth and easy.
Just the relationship that we have with each other. We just went out there and trusted each other marks and trusted the guy in front of us would give us the stick and the guy behind us would place it in there well. But we went out there and trusted each other.
All right, so I got to ask you this because I know it's always serious, but okay, so who's the biggest jokester of the four? Who plays the best pranks?
All of us.
So not only is improving your time obviously the thing, but playing the best prank. Okay, so to this point, be fair. Who's had the best one? Who's pulled somebody's leg the best?
I feel like it's probably me.
I feel like it's between these two. Yeah, it's between these two for sure. For sure.
Now, all right, so the PG-13 version. What's been one or two of the pranks that you can share with the fan base here? Because come on, we know you guys practice and you're working hard for times, but come on, give me a good one. Yeah. I mean, look, I'll give you one back in the day because I again, not that I was at your level, but occasionally I ran the 4x4. And in practice, somebody decided to put a little bit of super glue on the end of the baton that was being handed off to me. And yeah, I couldn't. Yeah, it was miserable as you could imagine. But I still laughed. But yeah, that's one that happened to me. I didn't even pull that one. That happened to me.
Nah. I don't really know.
I can't think of no.
I can't think of 13.
All right, now. As you guys are, so the next day, you guys are now you're going up to Oregon next, right?
Yes, sir.
Look at that. Okay, so, who's all going to be there? And look, I know you guys believe you can win it. You've put in the work, but who are some of your biggest challenge? Who's going to be your biggest challenge up there? Do you feel?
I feel like I can't speak for everybody, but for me, I just feel like it's going to be myself.
I would say
Just getting out there and just staying in my own race strategy and staying in my own race plan. If I do that, I don't feel like anybody can beat me.
And then, I mean, obviously on a relay team, but the camaraderie you guys have built. I mean, look, obviously the coaching has to be there, but just the chemistry that you guys have built on the track. But how big is it to have? I mean, look, you guys seem like you're having fun now playing pranks, but I mean, the chemistry off the track that you guys have built, how important is that? Not, I mean, for in the team sense, not just because you're the relay, but just in a team sense, how big is it to build that chemistry off the track?
It's a big deal, especially knowing that these guys got my back regardless of the outcome, and just being with each other 24/7. Man, I live with them here. Be with Jeremiah and Trev all the time on the game, going out to eat, getting food, just being with each other. It's like a brotherhood. So I feel like the chemistry is key.
All right. So what's your guys' favorite video game to play?
I'll say Rocket League. I'll go 2K.
Call of Duty for me.
All right. So wait, which one?
Fall Guys.
Okay. All right. So you each have a different one. I was going to say, so who's the best and what you like, but you each have a different one. So you're each the best in what you like. I like that. What, and I mean, just seeing how the team is done this year. I mean, obviously you guys are focusing on what you need to do, like I said, but checking out different events, the success of the team. How fun is that for you guys to watch?
I'd say this year, just getting to know more of the team, like the cross-country guys, the distance guys, the throwers and stuff like that, supporting them. I think that helped with everybody's success this year. I love to go watch Turner go out there and have a big throw and the crowd gets behind them, man. It's very electric to see.
Yeah. Read that all the energy.
Yeah, and well, great segue there. Man, you're going to be taking my job soon. You're sprinting around the track and you're taking my job. But I was going to say with Turner, I mean, the way he won the disc, I mean, look, I know, like in this day and age, guys, it's about drama, but come on, pins and needles, wait until his very last throw. When you guys saw that last throw, I mean, obviously you're happy for him in the disc, but I mean, did it just look like a bomb coming out of his hand?
Man,
we were excited.
We was excited, just getting ready for the 4x4. Then we seen that he was throwing, and we just seen him just make that big throw, take off the jersey, get the crowd going. Man, it got us pumped for the 4x4 as well.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny because people always say that. You're like, oh, you're focused on your event, but you pointed out right there. I mean, that had to give you crazy adrenaline right before the 4x4, and you guys turned in a season best on the 4x4, right?
Yes, sir.
Dang, man, making me feel old and slow, but that's all right. That's what I appreciate. I want you guys to do well. So, okay, you going up to Oregon. I mean, I know Turner has talked about obviously having Olympic aspirations, and you get into the sport wanting to do that. I mean, but do you guys have Olympic aspirations and wanting to get to the Olympics, either obviously in either the 4x1 or the 4x4?
Most definitely, but shooting for individuals. So for me, myself, I would love to be there in the open 400. I can't speak for these guys, but I'm pretty sure they'd love to be there in the individual races as well.
You guys do individual. Well, hey, if you did individual and you represented the country, because let's face it, Sun Devils should represent everything. I mean, I'm not a homer or anything. I'm just saying Sun Devils representing everything is a phenomenal thing. So after and so what are the dates again for the championship in Oregon?
The 6th of July to the 10th.
6th to the 10th. And then so after that, then what do you guys have?
We're making the team, so we're gonna get back here, train some more, get ready for Budapest.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That is so awesome. Again, and I always said, like, having run track, like you said, I mean, teammates can pump you up in different events. It's the biggest individual team sport, but and as you guys know, when you work together, it's the rewards obviously come in, but it is an individual team sport. But you guys definitely, as a relay team, have given a lot of excitement. And I gotta leave on this because it wouldn't be a fun question without any little rivalry banter. I mean, how fun is it to beat up on that team down south?
Man, 2 Too fun, man. Too fun.
That's something casual. I don't know.
I don't want to get you in too much again. I know the whole bulletin board thing, but yeah, I'm picking up what you guys are throwing down. But man, I'm so stoked for you guys. If you had to pick out one point in this year, maybe where there was maybe you were struggling with a little bit of a lull. What point was that? And then at what point did you guys feel that, as a group, we can take this to the highest level. We can take this to the championships.
I speak for myself. Texas Relays, we missed the the college invitational section in the final because of a missed handoff, and our coach got us into the pro section. We raised Christian Coleman, Kenny, and all of them, and we actually competed well enough. So after that point, I believe we can really go far in football 1 and football 4, and even individual events as well.
Nice. Yeah. Like I said, I mean, watching you guys again, watching the championships. And even like I said, because when we got to talk to Turner, I was giving him a hard time too. I was like, man, really the last throw, I'm sitting here. Like I said, being in those stadiums is always so much more fun, as you guys know, but I'm sitting at the TV. Of course, the person I know better than to yell at the TV because nobody can hear me except for me, but watching you guys do what you did, man, again. And all right, any messages, any outside stuff you guys got coming up that you want to shout out?
None outside of track, man.
Yeah,
we dialed in. We're ready. We're ready to go to quarter pass.
I love it. All right, Justin, Trevor, Dubin, and Jeremiah, man, thank you. Look, guys, thank you so much, and give a shout out to Will because he made this happen too. We were playing email tag and everything, but you guys are just moving around too fast to hang out with a slow person like me. But I greatly appreciate it. Forks up, and hey, man, go crush them. Go crush them in Oregon.
All right, thanks for having us.
That was awesome. Again, I want to thank Justin Robinson, Trevor Moyer, Dubem Wachukwu, and Jeremiah Curry. Pardon me, your 4x1 and 4x4 relay teams for the Sun Devils. Like you said, headed to up to Oregon. Said July 6th. So, yes, they are getting very, very close. That will be next weekend. So, yes, they will be up there. Watch it, follow it. I know I will be because they've had an insane season, plus getting to see, like I mentioned in the interview, and we saw earlier, Turner Washington. Watching him throw is always a very, very good thing. So, yeah, I mean, just what these young men have done. Absolutely just insane because I mean, they set ASU's outdoor track team real quick saw they earned 10 All-Americans, 2 Pac-12 titles, 4 program records, 19 program record updates, and a near NCAA 4x400 record. Turner Washington earned his 5th NCAA title and became a 9-time All-American. And the aforementioned, the men's 4x1 and 4x400 relay squads both ran program records at the NCAA championship, the 4x4 time being the number 3 time in NCAA history. So, yeah, And on the women's side, Christina Warren broke the program triple jump record in back-to-back meets, and Adriana Tatum and Jeremiah Curry shattered ASU's. Yeah, Adriana Tatum and Jeremiah Curry shattered ASU's women's and men's 200-meter records. The Sun Devils also celebrated the men's 4x400 relay and high jumper Grace Campbell earning gold medals at the Pac-12 championships, with 7 total medals being earned at the conference championship. So that was, just a part of it. And it was a is just absolutely insane. With what they were able to do. Yeah, so it was again very awesome track season, and it's still going for some of the men. So glad the ASU sprinters could join us. But as promised, now joining us, great friend of the program, the man who's dialed in on recruiting and listens to my crazy thoughts, which sometimes do happen. Sometimes they do come to fruition, but it's like being blindfolded playing darts. That's what I like to do around him to see if anything sticks, and if it does, then I look like I'm smart. But nonetheless, Chris Karpman from Sun Devil Source, the publisher of Sun Devil Source for 24/7 Sports, didn't enter the transfer portal. He is joining us now. Chris, man, thanks so much, obviously, for coming on. It's the last show of the summer before I hit it back up in August. But glad you could jump in. And, man, Coach Dillingham, he talked about energy. Let's just get right to it. He talked about having a lot of energy, and he fielded a roster for spring ball, which we thought was pretty amazing. But now these guys committing and coming in. Let me ask it to you like this, because I've had a thought. Yes, they won 3 games last year, and we all know winning breeds success. And in recruiting, a lot of recruits looking like, a team that won 3 games, I really want to go there. But how much of what he did, obviously at Oregon, his latest stop, but offensively, what he's done, how much has that helped in recruiting, especially with these offensive guys that have committed to ASU already for the 2024 class?
Yeah, it definitely matters, right? You have the ability to go back, look at what he did at Oregon, look at what he did at Florida State, Memphis, the staffs he was a part of, the offensive production. All these recruits who have committed to ASU, as far as I know, have already been on campus. A lot of them attended spring football practices. They've gone through all the film. They've watched and seen what their positions have been capable of at prior stops. And I've talked to all of them, and they've all indicated that they think that ASU's got a chance to be very potent. And I think this year, that there should be evidence of that, especially with their passing game, the options that they have to throw the ball to, their receivers or tight ends. And we've seen that ASU's, they got a tight end commitment today that was pretty high profile from Jaden Fortier. He's the number 1 tight end in Oregon in the 2024 class. He actually just yesterday passed USC and Oregon's tight end commitments from Oregon that are also well regarded. And they have 3 wide receivers who are committed to the program. All 3 of them are like in the top, I would say probably 50 to 75 receivers in the country, like at the end of the day, in their class. So they're putting together like a pretty complete class by the time they get to camp in August. Like they have, I think, 14 commitments right now. They're probably only going to end up with around 18 to 20 in total in the class, because remember, of course, they're going to take transfers again, probably 10 or more transfers, and they're not going to have nearly as much space as they had this last cycle, because they just added 50 guys. And So they're making a lot of headway.
And so the receiving core, because I know that comes, everybody's like, yeah, you got to be able to throw the ball and you have to have receivers. From now that you've kind of had a minute to digest all this, tight ends and receivers, how does this group look to you heading into fall ball? Yeah, we know spring really, you're not seeing another team, you're not seeing adjustments, but the tight ends and the receivers as a group, how does that, for ASU fans going forward, how does that look coming into next season for everybody?
So I did some cursory evaluation of the other rosters in the Pac-12, and ASU is going to be in the top 3 or 4 in the conference with their receivers and tight ends. The only team that you could say is clearly ahead of ASU is Washington. They return all 3 of their top pass catchers from last season. But after that, Arizona lost one of their top players. It's transferring to USC. And they're good at the top still, but they're thinner. USC is going to be very potent. Of course, they're always going to reload via transfer. They always have really talented guys kind of coming up through the system. Oregon is going to be very talented, as you would kind of expect. But I actually think that ASU might, and don't quote me yet, but I think there's a possibility for ASU to be the second best wide receiver tight end group in the conference. The reason I say that, right, is because, of course, Elijah Badger's back, 70 catches last year. He's top 5 returning in the conference. Jalen Conyers had 30 catches after Sean Aguano became the play caller the last 5 games of the season, 3 touchdowns at Colorado, 10 catches against Arizona. Yeah. I mean, he's capable of breaking all the tight end records at ASU in a single season. Right now, I think Chris Coyle has a record of 57 catches, maybe. The pacing that Conyers was on last year is ahead of, for the 5 games.
Right.
If you extrapolate through the course of a season, that's very easily outpacing what Chris Coyle did. The toughest record is probably going to be the number of yardage, the amount of yardage that was had. I don't remember if it was Todd Heap or Zach Miller, but I think it might have been Todd Heap. He had a crazy high, like 900 receiving yards or something along those lines. I have to double check, but that might be a little bit tougher. But if you put those 2 together, and then you add Geo Sanders had 40 catches last year, and then on top of that is Xavier Guillory was, I would say like a number 1 almost in the spring with Badger in terms of what it looked like in terms of what your distribution was going to be throwing the football around, right? And then Melquan Stovall looked pretty good as a movement piece that you can get the ball to quickly underneath, out and in breaking type of routes and stuff like that. Messiah Swinson is a very capable number 2 tight end from a receiving standpoint and a very good inline player. And then there's other guys we haven't even gotten to that have a chance to be good at ASU that, we could go down a rabbit hole forever talking about. Sure.
No, I mean, and when you said like Xavier Guillory, I mean, I was standing next to you, even watching individuals and then with quarterbacks and team, like if that ball, and I get it. My friends are like, yes, you always say it's that person's job. Like when they rip kickers saying they have one job, I said, you go and try and kick, I go, yes, that's what you practice, but you don't always get to practice with, 40, 50, 70, 80,000 people screaming at you, being really loud. And, somebody coming to, obviously block the ball, rip your head off, whatever. But they're like, yeah, the receiver's job is to catch ball. I'm like, yeah, but anything in this kid's area, like it was glue. It was like, I was kidding around with one of them. I said, literally, it was like being a little kid again, like go gadget arms, because he's just grabbing everything. And as a newcomer, obviously Coach Regal knows him and knew it. And I talked to him about what he could do. But yeah, like when you put it like that, like again, I know the off season and everybody in preseason is, hope springs eternal for everybody and they're excited. And I know I went out on a crazy limb talking to one of our other friends, Brad Denny, saying ASU is going to win more than 3 games this year and Colorado is going to win more than 1. I know it's not a crazy thin limb just because of what's going on. But yeah, to that point, the receiving core and let me ask you this too, last offensively, but I mean, obviously Jaden Rashada came in, took his steps in the spring. Coach Dillingham was happy with it. Obviously, Trenton Bourguet's there. Drew Pine came in. But I mean, could you see Rashada winning the starting battle as we have and going into fall camp, and then I mean coming out of it being that week 1 starter?
I think it's very unlikely. What we saw in the spring game, if you remember, was he aired a ball out into like triple coverage, double or triple coverage that was intercepted, and it was like first down around midfield, right? And then after that happened, Dillingham pulled him aside and they had a conversation about it. And the thing is, that's emblematic of the learning curve of assimilating. Now, to make clear, Rashada was behind the other quarterbacks, not just by age or experience, but also because he was a Session B arrival. So he didn't get to ASU until right before spring ball started. And the other quarterbacks had January, or at least a lot of January and February, to be able to consume the playbook and be able to then go out there. So Rashada, his physical tools, Michael, are superior to the other quarterbacks. Not even a question about it. He has fantastic physical tools, like to be, probably among the top 10 or so quarterbacks in the country in any given year, when he also has the ability to understand how to manage a scheme and an offense and all of these things. And so I think that his potential is really limitless, but Drew Pine was 8-2 at Notre Dame last year, and Trenton Bourguet was one of only 2 quarterbacks in the Pac-12 to complete more than 70% of his passes.
Yeah.
Along with, not coincidentally, Bo Nix, who Dillingham coached at Oregon, right?
Yep.
So the thing is, this is going to be an offense where you get your ball to your playmakers. We just talked about the receivers. You mentioned Colorado. I didn't even say Jordan Tyson as a transfer. I mean, the guy might be their 3rd or 4th receiver, and yet he's a top off the defense type of a guy who can be a home run hitter on top of their other pieces. And so they're going to get the ball to their playmakers, right? The question is going to be, in my mind, are they going to have the deep ball component that they would like to be able to have against the better defenses to keep them honest that they're going to play in the conference? That's something that Rashada would be able to provide because he's got a cannon, right? But he's not going to be able right now, I don't think, to get the ball 70+%, almost no negative plays, which is kind of what Dillingham wants, right? Keep the chains moving, stay on schedule, manage it, be able to audible. Dillingham had said, like, I let my quarterbacks run it. When they're at the line of scrimmage and they see something, let's go ahead and adjust the play and get into something that's more going to be more successful against what we're seeing defensively. Those are very difficult things for a freshman to come in and be able to do. The other quarterbacks, I think, can. And but I will say, because the physical tools are superior that Rashada has, by like the middle of the season, the end of the season, certainly by next spring, I think we're going to be having a different type of conversation than we're having right now, even if ASU has successful quarterback play from one of these other 2 guys this season.
Yeah, because I was about to say to you too, to piggyback off that, like being in a quarterback room, obviously with Trenton Bourguet, and like you said, Drew Pine going 8-2 at Notre Dame, but being in a quarterback room with Trenton Bourguet, a guy that, as we saw, could push the ball down the field, but within the system, and it worked very well for him last year, and also not turning the ball over, which Kenny Dillingham, one of his, like you said, one of his many phrases, 2nd and 10 is better than 2nd and 18. It's so simple for everybody. People, like, when he said it, I kind of laughed. I'm like, well, duh, but it's like, no, you're that, and we've talked throughout the years, when you're that talented, whether, as a quarterback or even a running back, when you're trying to cut back and make a play, when you're that athletic and uber talented, like, yeah, you can get out of it a lot of times, but then when you do get yourself in that trouble, like, okay, you just lost like 7 to 10 yards, and now you're in 2nd and 20 and not, 2nd and 10, which is a lot more manageable, like he says. But yeah, no, I think it'll be very interesting. And the one person I thought that, and I mean, Rashada did, but I thought Jacob Conover, and I think he had obviously a little more to do with his deep balls were very beautiful all through spring ball. I will give him that, because I think in 2 of the practices he had like a one drive, like 70-yard touchdown pass. I'm like, okay, well, that's a great drive. We'll take one play and a score. But when now like flipping the ball to the defense, and we've touched on it, but now that they've had time and you kind of see what they want to do. Some guys hit the, transfer portal after spring ball, like you said, would happen. But defensively, what can this unit be?
They can be pretty good. Let's just break it down, right? Brian Ward was at Washington State 1 year last year, did a fantastic job overall for the situation that he inherited. They don't have 4-star recruits at Washington State. They have a bunch of guys who are physical, play really hard, fast, smart. They're engaged, they're bought in. They have an aggressive approach. They're gonna bring a lot of 5 and 6 man pressures. They're gonna play a lot of zero coverage, single high safety type coverage. And what they have done via the transfer portal is they've added a bunch of guys who either were already very good players at like a lower level, the FCS level, like you add Shamari Simmons, for example, or you get somebody from the Pac-12 in Trey Brown, or Tennessee, Juwan Mitchell, who have played a lot of football and successfully, or you add guys who come from Oklahoma and Texas, who maybe didn't play a lot at those levels, but they're clearly athletic enough to be able to get after the quarterback, as we saw in ASU spring football. And so what's going to happen is Ward, the teaching curve is not that different from what he already experienced, right, at Washington State, being a first-year coordinator. The only thing that was really different is that Washington State had developed a lot of those players for a multi-year period of time, versus Ward is like assembling a bunch of different players, right? But they have, he's going to be able to evaluate what they were working with at these other schools and their systems and how good the coaching was. And then he's going to be able to say, okay, we're going to be able to pull these guys in and feature them prominently in what we're doing. And the secondary is so important to this scheme because, as I said, they're going to play a lot of man coverage and trust those guys while they're trying to get to the quarterback, right? And so when you have Ro Torrance and you have Ed Woods coming back and you have Chris Edmonds, who I think led the team in interceptions last year as a safety, and then you add Shamari Simmons, right, and Xavier Alford, and you have Jordan Clark as a really talented nickel, and this is like kind of a base nickel defense, right? You have a lot of guys that you're going to be able to trust on the back end, right? And then they handpicked the linebackers that they wanted to bring into their system. Juwan Mitchell, nothing against Kyle Soley or Merlin Robertson, but Juwan Mitchell is a better athlete. He's able to cover and move and do some things that ASU wasn't able to do before, while Trey Brown is a solid Mike. And then you move up front and you're like, okay, coverage has to pair with what you're doing with your pass rush capability, right? Well, BJ Green is back, and he was their best pass rusher probably last year. And now they have Clayton Smith from Oklahoma, who looked like maybe their best edge rusher, I would say, at least their best speed edge guy in the spring. And then Prince Dorba from Texas, who's a well-rounded guy. Those players gave ASU's tackles problems, including guys who have already started in the Pac-12, right? So you have this blending of the rush and coverage that I think has a chance to be a lot better than people will expect. I don't want to knock things that are already done too much, but ASU didn't utilize the personnel that it had in the best possible way last year.
Right.
Overly conservative, not blitzing, being very predictable in terms of their down distance tendencies.
Yeah.
And that, I think, didn't allow the talent to maybe be as to look as good as it otherwise probably would have. And when you're now going to have half of your team be starters that already have played elsewhere successfully, plus the guys that you're bringing, that you have back, your Anthony Coopers and BJ Greens and Ro Torrance, and right now, I think you're going to have actually a chance to be, at a minimum, a very competent average Pac-12 defense that also complements your offense. Because you're going to have a big play. Look, Michael, if you're going to have a big play capability on offense and the ability to score a lot of points, which ASU should have with this team, then you want on defense to be able to get negative plays, generate turnovers, and 3 and outs.
Right.
Okay. That's how you have a very good harmony of what you're trying to do defensively, right? You're not playing a bend, don't break while you're also potent offensively. And so I think we're going to see.
Sorry, you said the phrase right there that drives me crazy because, yes, even last year, I'm like, this whole bend, don't break crap is like at some point, and you and I know throughout history, at some point, you got to step up and just – and I always say to my friends, yes, I get quarterbacks playing at the college level. There are different talent levels, but at the same time, like arm talent levels, but at the same time, like they're starting for a reason. Just get them off the spot. Even if you just push them, getting a sack, yes, we all want the sack. Get them off the spot. Make them rush the throw. Because to your point, that's a great thing. But yeah, the bend don't break, especially, even in this day and age, but even for the last 10 years, you and I have talked about before, it absolutely makes me cringe. I'd rather go down in a blaze of glory. I'm not talking like the Raiders Steelers a few years ago on the last play of the game, go cover 0 and just let the fastest dude run by everybody. But I'm just saying at some point you got to take those chances. So yeah, I'm with you. I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, that phrase just, as you know, drives me crazy.
Yeah, and even if you do play that style, then you have to be very good in the red zone. And ASU gave up more touchdowns than anybody like in Power 5 probably, or up there in the red zone, right? And it has to match your personnel. If you have Ro Torrance is a big corner, right? If you have big corners, you need to get them at the line of scrimmage, let them get their hands on guys, let them be into man coverage. Don't play off coverage and expect them to handle that as well. And so I just think that the thought process of how do we maximize our personnel, how do we recruit to our scheme, right? And then how do we attack opponents? A lot of coaches, it's not that their schemes can't be successful or aren't structurally sound. It's that it's not the best utilization of their personnel and what their players can handle. Another example, you talk about quarterbacks getting off the spot, right? And how the value of that, right? Well, Emory Jones is a guy that you need to design to be moving around, right? You want Emory Jones running, moving the pocket, throwing the ball on the move. He presents challenges. Well, last year ASU tried to confine him and make him a pocket progression reading quarterback, and obviously that wasn't going to be able to be successful. And then you had tight ends that you're not even utilizing. Remember, ASU came out against NAU. They threw the ball, the glance route stuff to Swinson. It's like, okay, they got the tight ends coming. And then they went through 6 or 7 weeks of totally underutilizing their tight ends. It's the same offense when Sean Aguano becomes a coordinator and interim head coach. It's the same offense. They didn't go scrap their offense, but now you have now you're using your quarterback in the way that you should be using a quarterback. And you're then using your other positions in the way that maximize what your team's personnel is. And that's what's needed. And that's the thing, you'll remember this, ASU fans will remember this. Mike Norvell was great right out of the gate at being able to utilize personnel to put them in a position to be successful. Everybody saw 2012, oh crap, ASU's got a potent offense right now with a good coordinator. They're moving fast. The ball's flying around. Well, the thing is that Dillingham is a protege. He's the number 1 protege of Mike Norvell. So I asked Dillingham, what percentage of your offense is Mike Norvell's offense? He said 70, 80%. So ASU fans, just go back and watch and see what happened when Jalen Conyers is more talented, no offense, than Chris Coyle. But Chris Coyle had 57 catches. ASU didn't even have really talented receivers that they inherited, Mike Norvell, which is the reason why they threw the ball so much to their tight ends and their running backs. DJ Foster becoming so involved in the way that he was, right? You got the 2 backs on the field at the same time. Well, that's utilization of your personnel. So these guys understand, Xavier Guillory, That dude's one of the fastest guys on the team. I think I saw him have one drop maybe in all of spring ball in 7s and 11s. Like, it's crazy how reliable that he is. And then you have Badger and Conyers and Tyson. So, like you said, man, don't take negative plays. Don't end up, there's no reason to end up 2nd and 18. Throw the ball into the ground in a hurry. If you're getting pressured, live to see another day. Yeah. Worst case scenario, you don't go backwards, punt. Trust your defense is going to get a lot of stops, 3 and outs, turnovers, and keep it moving.
Yeah, and and it's funny because you talk about Conyers and Guillory, but the one guy we talked about too, I know he started spring a little slow, a little banged up. They were easing him in, but I mean, he's a legit. We were standing next to each other talking. Troy Amiri is 6'5". Like, you line him up next to, it's like, good luck defensive backs, because not everybody is, like you said, Ro Torrance and
220.
Yeah,
and 220.
Yes, 100%. And with Ro Torrance too, and that drove me crazy last year because, like you said it earlier, like Chris Edmonds led the team in picks. You have Chris Edmonds behind him. Let Ro Torrance at 6'3" get up with these receivers and say, get out, try and get off the line. Like, I know you can't hold. Let me hit you. Let me just take you off your route. Try and get off the line. You have Edmonds, like you said, behind him. You're playing nickel. You have a Jordan Clark, who's a ball hawk right there. You have guys that are right there, and it's like, yes, let him play. And I know, yes, to mix it up is one thing, but he's the one guy, cool. Let me line up right on you every time. Let me, by halftime, deflate you because you're not going anywhere.
And by the way, look, when kids are engaged and they're happy with what you're doing, style-wise, they play better. They're more focused. Everything is better, okay? So you have to incorporate that into your thinking about what we should be doing. Dillingham, you mentioned like some of his sayings and stuff. The one I like the most is we're going to have more fun working harder than anybody else in the country, right? And so we bring a basketball court onto the field, and we have competitions and dance-offs and all this stuff, but we're going to play really, really hard. I mentioned how hard and physical and tough that Brian Ward's teams were. Yeah. Well, a lot of it comes down to, are you going to be aggressive? Do you want to have the mindset and play the style that players want to play, which is getting after the quarterback, playing man coverage, right?
That's another thing Dillingham said in all his interviews. You want to play defensive end in this system. He said it's great for your defensive end.
Not just defensive end. You want to be BJ Green. You want to be Anthony Cooper. You want to be a defensive back. You want to be a linebacker who, we're going to show all the things that you're going to be able to do on the field. You're going to have to go run and cover a running back, a tight end. You're going to be able to get sideline to sideline. You're going to go blow people up on the perimeter and screens. So the style is you're going to blitz. You're going to be able to go get the quarterback. So you need your players to be bought into what you're doing. For that to happen, they have to respect you, trust what you're trying to do with your style and your approach. And also it helps if they happen to enjoy it. And then that ties into the recruiting component, because to go back to what we started with, guys come on campus, they talk to the players. Hey, what do you think about the scheme here and the way that you guys are coached and the style that you play? And everybody goes, oh yeah, we have a great time. Yeah, it's hard. We work hard. We have fun, and we're going to be able to go sack the quarterback and throw the ball deep and all these kinds of things. And the thing is, what starts all of this off is a head coach who has deeply considered every aspect of the things that I'm talking about here, because he's been so embedded in college football for the last dozen or so years, right? Like that's all he thinks about since he was 21, 22 years old is football, college football, being connected to young ascendant coaches like Dan Lanning and like Mike Norvell, right? And then how that matters in every facet of what we're trying to do. And I can't stress enough that there was and then on top of that, he's graduated from ASU. He's from the Valley. He understands all these things. So I can't stress enough that the learning curve that Herm Edwards had was multi-year. Todd Graham never coached in the West, didn't recruit California, struggled to understand the Arizona scene in a lot of ways. These coaches, it took 2, 3, 4 years, or maybe never,
right,
honestly, to learn what Dillingham already knows
yep.
and is able to implement in some of the most important ways.
No, 100%. And I mean, and I told you this, the first time I talked to him was when he was actually coaching with Coach Regal at Chaparral. Coach Regal used to let me come out to practice all the time before my games. I talked to some players before they got going. And then I was talking to him. He's like, hey, wait, talk to Kenny real quick. I got to go. He had to go talk to somebody. I just remember you were talking to him then. And I said, you've talked to a million people. And I go, but I was around your practices quite a bit then because you guys were we were doing your games a lot. And you're always playing for competing for state titles. I go, but yeah, even talking to him back then, I was like, man, I said, well, what about this? And he just the way he answered it then, I'm like, yeah, this guy's going to college. I'm like, he's definitely going to be coaching in college. I'm like, if he wants to go pro one day, who knows? We'll see. But for now, it fits ASU and it's awesome. I want to shift gears though, because I've been talking about this for a minute and we didn't get to go down it last time. The state of the Pac-12, obviously, we touched on the TV deal, the streaming, and everybody says, oh, I stream everything, I stream great. But yeah, you still want the big TV deal if you're a conference. I get it. But Colorado Dion coming in the splash saying, oh, we're going to go to the Big 12. And obviously the traders that are in Los Angeles and USC and UCLA jump to the Big 10. But the state of the Pac-12 going forward, I mean, look, the money's ruined the regional football rivalries. And I'm all for growth, as you know, but growth just for money, but you kill regional rivalries, schools not playing, like it's an insane thing. But that being said, the state of the Pac-12 going forward, yes, it would be nice if they added 2 more teams, good teams, San Diego State, not just because of what they did in hoops, but what they've done consistently in hoops, I think would be great. You're still in Southern California, which is good, but the state going forward, I mean, do you see teams wanting to jump ship, or do you see teams like, Oregon kind of taking the lead and saying, no, like we've built this here? Because I know it was rumored Oregon and Washington were allegedly vetted for the Big 10 as well. Like, I want to keep the conference together, having gone to school in it, but what do you see the state being going forward? I mean, Colorado's obviously going to jump ship. I mean, if they want to go back to the Big 12, Dion wants to go, this and that, cool. Have a good day, I guess. But what do you see it being?
So it's a pretty nuanced conversation, but my view generally is actually quite different, I think, than a lot of fans in the Pac-12 and even ASU. And I'll give you an analogy, okay? Remember when Sun Devil Stadium got cut down from 73,000 or whatever to what it is now?
Yeah.
Right? And tons of fans were so mad about cutting down the stadium size. They were like, well, what happens if we get really good again and we're able to pack this big stadium, but we're not going to be able to have that advantage anymore? And we're just basically telling everybody that we're not as big time in football as other places are around the country when we have a 50-something thousand seat stadium, right? And I think that was very whimsical. Okay. Times change, eras change, things evolve. Okay. What matters a lot more is not having 30,000 empty seats, 20,000 empty seats that everybody comes and sees all the time and then goes, gee, you guys aren't that well supported as a program when it's recruits, compared to a nearly full or full stadium that has a great energy at 50-something thousand. Okay. And the reason that to me is an analogy is everybody knows ASU hasn't gone to a Rose Bowl since 1996. Everybody knows that ASU is not ever competed to be in the college football playoff or been close to that. And if you want to be really honest, which I think is important to do as a starting point for any kind of conversation, ASU is never going to compete with the SEC and never going to compete with the very top of the Big Ten on a consistent basis if it was in a conference like that. Okay? If ASU went to the Big Ten, we would be talking about perennially ASU having really good seasons that are 7 wins or 8 wins. Okay? And when you expand the college football playoff, okay, and you end up with 12 teams, eventually maybe more teams than that, right? You get an auto bid in the conference like the PAC, okay?
Yep.
It feels, I'm telling you, you're not going to have the money and the resources to be able to compete with the top 15 to 20 programs in the country. But if you consistently dominate a conference, right, and you get regularly or somewhat often auto bids into the college football playoff because you're ticking off not 8, 9, 10 wins all the time, 11 wins sometimes, because you don't have USC and UCLA, and now all of a sudden you have a chance to be as talented as anybody else in your conference. Okay? There's a tremendous amount of value in that. And let me just give you another sort of way of looking at this. Do you really think that Gonzaga fans are unhappy with how things have gone for them in the last 10, 15, 20 years? Maybe compare that to Memphis or Xavier basketball or other places that have moved up only to see that they've never been able to have the same type of consistent success that they already previously had and that they now long for because they're in a different caliber of conference.
Right.
Okay. And so what I'm saying is, when you say, oh, ASU, let's just go and become a part of a super Big 12. Okay, maybe ASU can be successful in the Big 12 and if it expanded. Okay, maybe. But there's not a lot more money that's going to be extracted from that. You know, you might be able to get $5 more million or something like that a year, but that shouldn't change the game all that much. And ASU is not getting a Big Ten invite anytime soon. The Big Ten and the SEC, those are separate things. They're on a totally different scale. And even if ASU was in there, then ASU would be the team that was at the very bottom or towards the bottom third probably of those conferences in terms of ability to be successful. ASU's not beating Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State. I'm sorry. Like, people can say that's going to happen. It might happen in a year or 2 years. I'm talking about reliably. Okay. Right. So my personal view is ASU fans would be pretty stoked if they were still in a PAC, whatever PAC 10, 12, whatever, however many teams. Okay. Where they were consistently winning 9 games or more and getting and in the conversation all the time to be able to get into the playoff.
Yeah, because that's what you get right there. I mean, you get into the 12. You talk about revenue generating. You get into the 12. I know for both, whatever, it's still more money.
Well, and how do you actually move up in terms of how you are perceived in the national pecking order? The way you move up is through consistent success. Consistent success chasing money doesn't fix things. Chasing money allows the administrators to make more money, the coaches to make more money, and yet doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be more successful. ASU is a very good destination in the transfer portal and with recruits regionally in the West because of the ability to play all these games in the West. You lose USC, UCLA, okay, great. A lot more kids from LA, they want to go to ASU because you can play in a conference that still has all your games in this region.
Right. You know what? And that's a great segue. And I was going to ask you this anyway, but not just for ASU, but for everybody, even, USC and UCLA, do you think that short-term extending out to the long-term, how will that affect recruiting? Because like you said, I mean, kids might want to go away from home, but they don't want to play, like you said, 30 to 40% of their away games, 3,500 miles away. I mean, USC and Rutgers, USC and Penn State. Yeah, USC and Penn State for tradition. That's great. But how many families, I get this day and age of the NIL, but still 3,500 miles away. Do you feel that, how will that affect recruiting for schools like, maybe ASU, Oregon, Arizona, Washington, Stanford, whoever?
Yeah, I think ASU's not going to all of a sudden get a lot of kids that wanted to go to USC or UCLA, but now they're hesitant because of switching to the Big Ten. But the difference, though, is ASU's going to get more kids that are sort of at the fringe of they normally would go to other places that I think now they're probably going to want to consider going to ASU. Out of Southern California and even maybe Northern California, Las Vegas, et cetera. And again, very importantly, a lot of it comes down to success. Success begets more success, right? So if you start winning a bunch of games because you don't have USC and UCLA in your conference anymore, and you're as talented as everybody else that's left, or close, right? Oregon maybe is a little bit more depending on kind of what happens. But now, if you're well coached and all these things, you start to get better caliber of recruits, and also you're a destination spot for transfers, which is how ASU is going to probably end up having 30, 40, 50% of its scholarship players moving forward. So again, don't chase things that are gone and never coming back, right?
Yep.
Try to make the very best decision that you can for what the next 5 to 10 to 15 years looks like in college football. And then if you have success that is sustainable, reliable, right? Then you have the ability to move up a tier in terms of how you are perceived and what else is possible, because we're not, this is just one round of a whole lot of rounds of consolidating and movement and all this kinds of stuff. So the reason, just to give a fair counterpoint, the reason that you would want to go to the Big 12 would primarily have to do with a lack of confidence in Pac-12 leadership and Pac-12 presidents, and their lack of understanding that you need to really fund football as a mechanism for lifting your entire athletic department, right? ASU should not be one of the bottom schools in the Pac-12 at funding football recruiting budgets, travel budgets, and other sorts of things of this nature, while you're also expanding your sports so aggressively. This is how you end up on the wrong end of needing to be subsidized more by your university than almost any school in the country athletically.
Right.
Is because you're trying to do everything, and doing everything prevents you from being successful in a way that then you're we're middle-aged guys, okay? We remember and we understand what ASU was at a different era.
Right.
There's a lot of people in their 20s, even maybe 30s and younger, who they do not remember or understand. And you go to all the ASU games and everything, right? What we see is the demographics are getting older in a lot of ways. Yes, people bring their little kids, right? Of course, because they're passionate about ASU athletics.
Right.
But there's a lot of older people who make up a huge percentage of the fan base.
Yeah.
And younger people are choosing to do something else with their disposable income because they say, well, I've given a lot of money to ASU and they haven't gone anywhere better than the number 3 bowl in the conference in the last 20 years.
Right.
We're going to holiday bowls, right? Like ASU never even went to the Alamo Bowl when the Alamo Bowl was the number 2 bowl in the conference.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
As far as I can remember. So if the conversation always comes down to, is ASU going to be in Las Vegas or El Paso for years and years and years and years, fans go, yeah. And, I don't, all this conference realignment and NIL and the professionalism of student athletes and all these things, I'm just gonna check out.
Right.
And if enough of your people check out, you're done. You don't come back from that.
No. Well, it's
And
just like, and to even validate your point even more is we were talking about this at spring ball. Remember, Auburn's paid out over like 19 or 20, some odd $20 million to fired coaches, which the boosters pick up. They don't even bat an eyelash, which is, to your point, is insane and ridiculous. I mean, to me, that's ridiculous, but they don't bat an eyelash. Fine, get rid of them.
Yeah, because what they're doing is they're cycling through more quickly to be able to find success, which, it goes both ways. It can be, self-harming, or it can actually get you to Jim Harbaugh,
right,
as an example, more quickly. Because Michigan, they're cycling through, and then they get Harbaugh, right? So it can go both ways. But my point is that you need to have people very invested in what you're trying to do. And investment doesn't come from averaging 6.5 or 7 wins a year for 20 years or something.
Yep. If you don't have a vision on improving, why should they have a vision on investing?
Yeah. And if you're telling people, we're not going to pay top of the food chain, we're going to try to do it this other way. Kenny Dillingham, I think, is a great hire because of all the reasons I kind of said, but also because ASU's not paying more than $3-point-something million a year for a coach. And the top 30 coaches in the country are 25 to 30. They're making $5+ million a year now. And their staffs are getting paid. And they have a huge phalanx of people behind the scenes in their recruiting and production of all of their, forward-facing stuff they do in their program.
Right.
So you have to be able to say, you can't just self-eliminate from this, from all of this. You have to be able to keep up with everybody. And the way that you do that is you have success. So ASU needs it, and then they need to be able to extract everything they can from their fan base.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I've heard people, like you said, older people that still have season tickets, have had them for years. And, and they're like, oh, like the donation or whatever went up. And it's like, they love it and they go and they're lifelong supporters, but they're like, to your point, hey, like, let's get to that.
A lot of that really is dissatisfaction or a lack of confidence in Michael Crow or Ray Anderson. And the things that are articulated as these are our aspirations and goals and what we think are very realistic. And then you don't come close to that. But then you say, we're in a better place than we were 5 years ago, even though obviously you weren't. And so it's a lot of the messaging and a lot of the leadership. And, it goes to the conference stuff, right? Ray Anderson saying, they were shocked when USC and UCLA left. Why? There's no honor among thieves. Everybody's trying to get the most money that they can.
Right. The writing was on the wall. We talked about this. The writing was on the wall from the last negotiations when UCLA and USC were saying, no, fine, if that's the money, this is what we deserve. This is what the rest of you get. And from what I understood, and you might know a little more, Oregon kind of stood up, kind of pulled the Tom Osborne in Nebraska and said, hey, people think we put money up here, but we're doing just good. You don't get, we've done a lot for the conference too. So I know it's sort of good.
When you start giving disproportionate amounts of money in media rights to certain schools, you're going to have a problem.
Right.
So you have to be able to elevate the entirety of what you're doing. They made terrible decisions going back to Larry Scott and their media rights strategy.
Right.
And the thing is that Michael Crow and Ray Anderson, nobody supported that vision and touted that vision more than they did. So the thing is that if you're always sort of, seeing what happens after the fact and then reacting, you're never going to be able to get to where you need to be. You have to be proactive and smart.
It's the mantra of the NCAA, Chris. reactive, not proactive.
It's so everything is so, and it's like none of this was surprising. Of course you're going to have more conference realignment and teams moving, and if teams feel like they're not going to be able to make as much money as they want to be able to pump through their coffers, then they're going to go to different conferences. That's what has always happened.
Yep, 100%. Hey, I want to wrap on this because I know you talked about, obviously, support, making a splash on what they're doing. And I mentioned them before. Obviously, Deion Sanders, Coach Prime at Colorado. Like, that's a big thing. But inevitably, and there was a ton of people at their spring game. It was packed. They're excited. I get it, even though the weather was terrible. But for now, since they're in the Pac-12, what can somebody like Deion do for the conference? And yes, they have to win because nobody, like you said, after a while, nobody's going to celebrate a team that's 3, 4, 5, 6-win team. But for now, what does that boost of Deion do for the conference in your eyes?
It's more eyeballs and more social media posts and more things that in the aggregate, they mean a lot to what you're kind of trying to do. I don't think that it makes the Pac-12, more valuable, not much more valuable if at all. But attention matters. Now, I happen to think that the Deion experiment is probably only going to end in one of two ways. It's either that he does a very good job and he gets hired somewhere else that's a better job within the next few years, and in which case he probably would pull all of his players there, or a lot of them, or they would transfer elsewhere, which means I don't know if you're back to square one, but you're not where you want to be, right? Or the other thing is that it's an abject failure and sort of an embarrassing sort of thing that is extremely high visible, except for the fact that I respect going for it for Colorado because they have not had any real success or attention in a lot of years at a sort of a high level, right? So I kind of get it, but I also think it's a little bit grasping at straws. And they have, I think, like a dozen scholarship players back, okay? Which a lot of them they didn't want back, but they lost some really good players also who didn't want to be part of the show, the Deion show, right? The prime thing. Jordan Tyson and other guys who departed.
Yeah.
And if you look very closely at their roster, they added a lot of skill. But their offensive line seems to be
thin.
A very big question mark. Very, very big. And you still need to block and tackle. So got to block and tackle. You don't win but because you have the most swag on the sidelines, right? He's done a great job to this point. I think that he warranted getting a job like this. I think that he still has a lot of things that he needs to learn and sort of come to understand about coaching at the Power 5 level and being stable. But I don't think that Colorado necessarily made a mistake, but I also don't think that this is going to result in Colorado having a much better overall football profile, say 5 to 7 years from now.
Right. No. And it's funny you say that too, because when we were talking about the Big 12 in Colorado, saying, Arizona and Arizona State would be perfect for the Big 12 where they are, everything like that. But now with Colorado, it's like we go into the Big 12, but if it's, 2-3 years out, and like you said, they're barely a 500 team, it's not the splash the Big 12 wanted. And I'm not saying Deion's going to be that. I'm not rooting, for or against that. I'm just saying, like, that's not the splash the Big 12 wants when they come in.
I mean, I do think that if Colorado leaves, the odds really increase that Utah, Arizona want to leave. And if that happens, then you're probably going to see the Pac-12 just get cut up and carved into pieces. I don't want to underestimate the chances of that happening. I think the chances are very good. I'm just saying that if it's me in charge, I don't really want to be in the a huge Big 12 where you're not obviously going to be at the top quarter of the food chain in that situation. Like you could, make your way there potentially, but the recruiting base and the sort of established success of some of those programs will, and how passionate the fans are and NIL and some of that, it makes it difficult. And so these are the reasons why I think it's probably best, even if the Big 12 is not going to be equivalent ever to the Big 10 or the SEC. So if you accept that as a fact, okay, it might be good, but it's not going to be equivalent to the Big 10 or the SEC financially or any of these other kind of ways. They're not going to get as many teams into the playoff, any of that stuff. So if you accept that, then you might as well, in my opinion, even if it's worth a little bit less money, stay in the PAC, dominate the PAC, or try to dominate the PAC, and have fans be really happy because you win most of your football games and you have a chance to go to good bowl games and make the playoff. More than ASU's had. Okay, they played in the Pac-12 title games against Stanford and they lost and all that. If they had won, then they would have been in a bigger bowl game and all that stuff. Okay, yes, but they didn't. And so in a 40-year period, they've had 2 outstanding, truly outstanding, amazing seasons.
Right, 100%.
You need to be able to have more 11-win seasons.
Yep. No, I agree with you. And look, you know me, I'm a homer, but I'm also fair, and I can call things when I need to call them. But my stubbornness is like I said to you with the Big 10 and the SEC, why I have a problem saying there's a best conference when the Big 10. Now, you want to say the top half is better, okay, of each one? Sure, because when Mizzou went into the SEC, yeah, they've gotten a little bit better, but nobody talks about them. They're in the SEC. And SEC fans have it both ways, want to have it both ways. And I understand that. I get the talent. I'm not blind to it. You and I have talked about that. I understand it. But I'm just going to, when I say like, you want to talk about the top 4 teams, 4 or 5 teams, sure. But the bottom 4 or 5, it's a crapshoot. But
here's
goes to
okay, no, go ahead. Let me just ask you a question. Okay. So my question in response to what you're saying is, where would the 6th, 7th, and 8th SEC teams in the standings, where would they be in the Big 12? In
last year when I looked at, I compared, the funny thing is I compared them to the Big 12 and the ACC because I was trying to say, I'll leave the Pac-12 out because you guys know I'm going to be a homer, but in the Big 12, I mean, Oklahoma State, Baylor, even Oklahoma, the way Kansas started, I'm just taking it a 1-season thing. And that's the other problem that I've talked to you that I've had. I get it's 1 season. So yes, if there's a team that's 11-0 and in a Power 5, people are like, oh, well, they're undefeated. They play who's in front of them like everybody else. It does become a pseudo, I won't say lifetime, but kind of recent history, generational, achievement award for some of the teams. Have they earned it? Have they done it? And yes, we're not going to go down the rabbit hole of scheduling because everybody does it. I get annoyed with it. And when a team loses to a big team like that, like when Appalachian State goes into A&M and smacks them up, couldn't be happier. They got paid a lot of money and they smacked them up and made the conference look dumb. And then when A&M beat Alabama, I'm like, I don't even want to hear about Alabama in the playoff. I don't. They lost to a team that couldn't beat Appalachian State. You want to connect dots? Those are straight dots. But I'm with you because at some point, when I look at it, yes, what they have with recruits, and again, the talent. But when you mentioned to me some player, you look at okay, I look at, let's say USC and Oregon, for a stretch, and you go whether you say Ohio State and Michigan and, Alabama and, whether you want to say Georgia or Alabama and Georgia over a stent. You could fill up NFL rosters. I mean, not every single person is going to go, as you and I know. You can fill up NFL rosters and have very good teams from those 6. 100%.
Well, but listen, man. I mean, Kansas State won 10 games last year, right? What does Kansas State do in the SEC?
Right. Who knows? Overall, in general, I'm with you. But for last year, like I said, focusing on that season, maybe you know what? Maybe they win 9 games. Maybe they won because I could see them beating up on the bottom.
I don't think so. I don't think beating up on the bottom. I mean, that's like 2 or like the bottom of the Big 12 is Iowa State, West Virginia. Kansas was like a 500 team or whatever this past year.
And they started out 5-0. Kansas started out like 5-0. They won and
then lost like 7 of their last, whatever games or something. I mean, like, Baylor, I'm just saying, like, if you take the I strong, like, TCU won 13 games, man. If you telling me like TCU was they won 9 games in a row at one point. You're telling me that TCU wouldn't have lost 2 or 3 of those games in the SEC? I mean, in my opinion, there's just no way. Like, I just don't.
Right.
I just think that I think that it's a totally different caliber of football. I think Texas won 8 games. I think Texas would be a 5 or 6 win team. Would have been a 5 or 6 win team in the SEC. I mean, Oklahoma State won 7 games.
Year. I mean, Oklahoma and Texas are headed there next year.
Yeah. No, I mean, look. I think people are doing it for money. They're not doing it because they have a better chance to be successful. Do I think Texas and Oklahoma have a better chance to be successful? And the SEC on average in a year? No, they don't.
But they're still big enough national brands. And I mean, Oklahoma, to your point, I mean, more recently has obviously, yes, been in the college football playoff, had Heisman Trophy winners. Yes, I get Lincoln Riley's gone, but you're still going to be able to recruit that region now. Especially
no. I know they're going to have elite talent and they're still going to have really great seasons. All I'm saying is that, okay, look, again, let me just do a basketball analogy because I think that it makes a lot of sense. There's a tournament. Football, there was no tournament until now. Now there's going to start being an actual tournament. Okay? It's the most important things in basketball is getting as many 1, 2, and 3 seeds as you possibly can in the tournament.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
It doesn't matter if you're in the best conference or if you're Gonzaga and you just kill the WCC and you get a 1 or 2 seed every single year. Okay? The goal is getting a good in the tournament and a good placement seeding in the tournament.
Right.
That is your goal. There's a paradigm shift that's happening right now in football where this is going to become more like that. Not as much like that.
Right. No, but
that's 68 teams or whatever, but it's going to become more like that, right? ASU fans and a lot of other schools are going to start to evaluate it by how often are we getting into tournaments.
Right.
Now in basketball, ASU goes to the Big 12. Right? It's a juggernaut in basketball.
100%.
Right now, ASU fans are happy if they get in the tournament every 3 years. That's like good, right? On average, once every 2 or 3 years. They've historically been more like once every 4 or 5 years. Okay, right. But if you go to the Big 12, okay, people say, oh yeah, well the Big 12 they get 9 teams into the tournament or 8 teams into the tournament. Okay, sure, but the Pac-12's got 6 teams into the tournament before, right? So Oklahoma State and Baylor and TCU and Kansas. I mean, and if Arizona then goes and you've got problems, right? And I'm just saying that be really good at your conference, be top of the food chain in your conference, even if it's a little watered down, right? Another great analogy, ASU fans, what do they long for? They long for the Frank Kush glory years.
Yeah.
How many of the Frank Kush glory years were after ASU went to the Pac-10 conference?
Which he didn't want to go to at first. He was very opposed to.
None. None of the glory years were after that.
Right.
But ASU fans filled up a 70,000 seat stadium and loved dominating a second-tier conference by being at the top of the food chain and winning 8, 9, 10 games all the time or more.
Right. No,
So
man.
I'm just saying, be careful what you wish for.
Right. Considering I went to school there, I want the conference to stay together, as you did too. But I want the conference to stay together. But yeah, no,
that's over. That's over. Like,
yeah.
I mean,
everybody,
when you lose USC and UCLA, it's literally never ever going to be the same.
right.
So figure out, not how you try to hold on to what emotionally feels good,
Right.
but what actually gives you the best chance at winning the most games, getting into the tournament the most amount of times, giving yourself something to be happy and to talk a lot about.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, look, what Bobby Hurley has done in a short time, like you said, yes, it's been, being part of the, the first four, but still going to the tournament, shrinking that thing. I mean, we've seen with our eyes more excitement around ASU hoops. Like, okay, we want to take that next step, but to your point, at least you can finally talk about, okay, we're there, that next step. And then for Gonzaga too, like, yeah, I'm with you, because the WCC, St. Mary's has gone, trying to go toe to toe with them in recruiting, transfer portal, change that. But I always give this to Gonzaga. They're out of conference schedule since they've, constantly been in the tournament. Not too many others match their out of conference. Nobody wants to talk about, they say they have to play these teams. Well, maybe they do, but they take them on. Mark Few just smiles and keeps going.
But also because they know that they're going to lose one or two games in their conference, and they're still going to be like killing it.
Right.
And so even if they lose again in these marquee games, right, they're still a 4 seed. If they lose all their marquee games, they're still like a 4 seed, because there's a strategy and formula to all these kinds of things. Right.
No, that's true, because one of my friends it's funny because I wouldn't want him to bore you, because at times he even gets me, but like, he would sit there and do all the numbers, like for before it went to 68, but like he literally do all the numbers and say, yeah, and like Gonzaga, when they would be a 12 or they would be an 11, he's like, this is a 5 seed. They're a 5 or 6. They're not this. They're just getting, and he's showing up. And I was like, man, then when they started playing everybody, he said exactly what you just said. He goes, even if they lose all those games, which they won't, they'll beat, if they play, he goes, if they, in your neck of the woods, if they play in Arizona, if they play at UCLA, he goes, whatever, they play Kansas, they play Kentucky, they're not going to lose all of them. He goes, but even if they did, and they dominate their conference. Say they only win one. He goes, I won't say lose all. Say they only win one and dominate their conference. They're no lower than a 4 seed.
I mean, look, it's not just like Butler. Look at Butler, right? Butler's in the Horizon League when Brad Stevens was there. Okay. And they win the league, like whatever, 5, 6 something times in a row. And then guess what? They get to the Final Four like twice.
Yeah.
Right. And then he leaves, and right around the time when they went to the Big East.
Yep.
Okay. And look, maybe they don't have a coach as good as Brad Stevens, obviously, but it doesn't matter if Brad Stevens was still the coach. Okay. They weren't going to do as well. They were not going to do as well in the Big East.
Right.
Right. And so then let's look at their last 10 to 12 years. Right. They, I think, made a Sweet 16 like once or twice in that 10-year period.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like, is this exactly an analogy for ASU? No, I'm just saying that the goal is getting your profile as good as you possibly can in the end of November.
Yep.
Right? On a regular basis.
Yep.
The question that really needs to be asked, and maybe people can come to different conclusions than me, but is that better for ASU in the Big 12 or in the whatever's left of the PAC?
Right. No, 100%. Like I said, Oregon and Washington will be the next dominoes. And not to disrespect Utah, I think Utah too. So, but yeah. Hey, man, we went over.
Yeah.
This is absolutely great. Thank you so much again for jumping on. Like I said, I'll be back in August. I'm going to enjoy the very cold summer weather in Phoenix. I will make a trip to San Diego, but hopefully before fall camp, we can get a drink or something. I at least owe you one of those, because I always appreciate your time, my friend. And enjoy. And It'll be fun. Hopefully everybody beats up on USC and UCLA this year, especially in football, and they get to leave the conference as the biggest losers.
I think that's something that pretty much all the other fan bases and everyone would like to see happen.
Yes. I know. I said it last week on the show, Chris. I was like, and some people hit me up in the comments. They're like, yeah, we were waiting for that one. Took long enough. I said, look, I get why I go when it becomes to money. Yes, they'll still bring a ton of money to the Big Ten. USC can rival Ohio State in that. I get it. UCLA says they're broke, which I don't understand, but that's a whole nother thing. But I said, yeah, I go, well, next year in football, I go, hopefully, and even in hoops, they get ganged up on and they get to go to the Big Ten saying, with their tail between their legs. I said, that'll be, I guess, a badge of honor for the rest of the pack. I said, now, will it happen? Who knows?
You know how you go broke at UCLA? You fund all your other sports while 20,000 people show up at the Rose Bowl. To watch football.
Right. But basketball still sells out. But it's not enough. I get it. No, believe me. I know. I'm just saying that in jest because it's UCLA hoops, but no, 100%.
Oh, they did a great job with their basketball situation. They finally did what they probably should have been doing for a long time. But football is still going to be the biggest monetary driver. And don't think UCLA is going to go to the Big Ten and they're going to have more football success. They're going to have more money. Right. But the fans don't get the money. The money goes to the administrators and the coaches, and it pays for, the recruiting budget and the charter flights and all that. That's where the money is going to go. Yep. Right. And it'll trickle on down to their other sports and stuff. But UCLA is not going to go to the Big Ten and then all of a sudden experience a lot more football success. No.
Right. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, like I said, I want to it's like I want to root for him, and somebody's like, fine, whatever, go. I get it. Evolution, like I said, but it doesn't mean just if you're evolving, you're making everything better. But my friend, have a wonderful day. But like I said, let's chat soon. I know you're traveling. Like I said, I'm hitting San Diego before Camp T. So stoked we get to go back up to Camp T.
Yep.
But yeah, let's grab a drink and hang out and make fun of UCLA and USC and all those other fools.
Let's do it. Okay, we'll talk later. See ya.
Awesome. Oh man, that was Chris Karpman. Love when he comes on, man. The publisher of Sun Devil Source for 24/7. I went totally over, but you know what? Hey, this will be up. You can watch it. Those of you that have jumped in and watched, it'll be on Sideline Sports YouTube. It'll be there. But yes, I mean, that's my thing. We talked about it. I mean, conference realignment, money, yes, what it means for ASU, what it means for the rest of the conference. I mean, Utah, like you said, obviously Oregon, like we were talking about, a domino from that. Oregon's a huge domino. And Washington being there in the Pacific Northwest with them. Okay, but would the Big Ten want Oregon State? Now, what Jonathan Smith has done in football, getting that extension that he got, well-deserved. We talked about that here on the show. But again, coming down to the money, status of the Pac-12 for now, and we'll see what again this year brings. I think that leadership will be in question at all on campuses with the presidents, obviously with George Kliakov, the newer commissioner. I mean, now it's his second full year. He just finished his second full seat year, and then now heading into his third. As the fall comes up and with football and getting underway, like I said, and everything like that. So it still is the Pac-12 for now, my friends, but we'll see what happens. So again, I'm going to get out of here. Everybody enjoy, obviously, the rest, wherever you are. If you're in Arizona, enjoy the scorching oven, which is awesome. But you'll be able to check this out. I'll be back in August. On Twitter, I'll have more dates and stuff like that. Follow me at Diablo00. See anything crazy you want to point out to me? Hey, questions, banter, trash talk, make it fun, keep it civil. We can go back and forth. But you see anything, hit me up on Twitter at Diablo00. I'll put stuff up as I see it. But yeah, enjoy the summer. And I will see you in August with more Pac-12 preview, as we'll be focusing on, obviously, a lot of football, but volleyball will be going on as well too. So we will get to that, as it is UCLA and USC's final hoorah in the Pac-12. So we'll go from there. But everybody, again, have a great time. So glad everybody joined again. I want to thank Chris Karpman for coming on. And obviously the ASU sprinters, which was awesome. Justin Robinson, Trevor Moyer, Dubin Wachukwu, and Jeremiah Curry. So that is awesome. But yeah, we will see you in August. Have a great one. And yes, you guys know, as always, forks up.